Good evening, everybody, and welcome. You are in the right place. It is a beautiful Wednesday evening, and we are so pleased and honored to have you here today. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for your membership. We have a fantastic webinar that's going to prevent your children from getting involved in scams. Because, you know, parenting is harder than it has ever been. Not only do you have to work with your children on keeping them safe from cyberbullying, but you have to watch out for the scams. The best thing you can do for your child is make sure that they do not become a victim. And guess what? We've got two amazing presenters to give you the right information so that you can protect your precious beloved. Yes. We have today Sean Casey. He is my favorite Patelco presenter. He has been presenting for 25 years. I think he was a prodigy. And also we have our delightful Tiffany Kiefer. Both of them are principals. Sean is a senior principal information security analyst, whereas Tiffany is a principal fraud program partner. You are going to be delighted with the information that you hear. And please welcome my beloved colleagues, Tiffany and Sean. Take it away, kids.
Thank you so much, Veronica. The love goes both ways, naturally. Very kind introduction. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. You know, I usually start these things out with a little bit of personal information. That's what they tell me I'm supposed to do in presentations so that I become a little bit more approachable. I've been doing information security for over 25 years. I've been working in Silicon Valley in various different companies, and now I'm privileged to work for Patelco because they let me do things like this seminar here to help inform you, in this case, how to prevent your children from being victims of fraud and scams through the various ways that they're being approached these days. And with me is Tiffany Kiefer, and I will allow her to continue her introduction.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Tiffany Kiefer. I am with the Fraud Prevention Group for Patelco. And like Sean, I have many years of experience involving fraud and working with children and teenagers to understand what fraud is and how it can impact them. So I'm really looking forward to having this presentation go through and for us to share information with fellow parents. Okay, with Sean. Thank you, Sean. You'd like to kick us off.
Thank you, Tiffany. So what we'll be focusing on today are three main points. First, we'll talk about what the fraudsters are doing. Then we'll talk about the ways that we can protect our kids, and then the strategies and kind of guidance on how to handle certain situations, or hopefully this never happens, but if you end up in a situation where your child has experienced some type of a scam or had their identity stolen. So when we look at children and our kids becoming victims of fraud, we have a three-way intersection that we're really looking at, where it's youth, it's an account at a financial institution, and then there's a scam. That's when those three come together. That's when we're experiencing this. So what we see is that we have three main vulnerabilities or issues that we need to address. Number one, schools don't teach children anything about finances, financial responsibility, interacting with financial institutions, and sometimes they're given things that they don't understand how to use properly. Kids are also very profitable because they're young and they have access to some funds. They don't have the worldly knowledge, perhaps, that might help older, more seasoned folks such as myself to avoid a fraud, because we've experienced the world where sometimes people are offering things that aren't real. And then finally, parents end up paying out. Kids aren't generally held responsible for these events, and if the child has willingly participated in a scam, the parents can be held liable for the losses that are incurred there. So when we transition next over, we look at how we're protecting against these things. So since the schools don't teach it, we're learning about it tonight. And educated kids will be fraud fighters instead of fraud victims. And less fraud means that you get to keep your money. The scammers aren't running away with it. They're not stealing the money, perhaps from the membership or from the corporation that is handling your baking. It all stays where it belongs. I view this as a battleground. We have to fight the fraudsters, and unfortunately, the kids have to learn also how to fight against this. And we'll start with where are kids targeted and what types of scams are being sent to them. So when we look at it first, kids love free stuff. Who doesn't love free stuff? I want free stuff. Everybody wants free stuff. Usually when somebody approaches you online for free stuff, it's costing somebody, and it's probably going to be you. Tiffany, I see that you came off of mute there. Did you have something to throw in here?
I absolutely do. And so when we're talking about kids being targeted online, we're thinking social media, right, Sean? And
thank you.
Yeah. I
did miss that little title there.
When you're thinking social media, quite honestly, some of the biggest platforms that we're seeing reporting of fraud involve Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, wherever there's popular content, right? And so what are those scams that actually show up on those platforms? And so we've had several cases of individuals saying, I will pay you to be my friend and to talk to me online, right? That sounds like an easy job. I'm a kid, I want money. And so the fraudsters will send that child a check. And when I say child, I'm talking 15, 16, 17. We've had kids as young as 11 and 12 who have fallen victim to this scam where they get this check in, don't tell their parents, deposit the bad check. The fraudster then asks for money back, right? And so when that check returns, that child's account will go negative, because oftentimes children don't understand how that type of transaction works. Just because you put a check into your account and the funds are available does not automatically mean that that check has cleared, right? And so that's a very common one. And I see we're looking at fake people and romance scams, right?
Right. So when we're talking about fake people, there's a lot of fake people that have been used online. So one of the big ones right now are fake influencers. I know that a lot of kids really enjoy following these influencers because they do silly stuff on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and all the social media sites actually. And
celebrities, right?
They really are a celebrity.
Yeah, that celebrity is going to convince me to do something I wouldn't do otherwise.
Yep.
And so that's a very common one. Now, jumping on to romance scams can impact people from every age bracket, including teenagers, including young teenagers, right? And again, I want to impress this person, so I'm going to do something that I would not otherwise do. And so that's how that influence moves these kids to perform activities, to perform actions, to send money back to the fraudster. That's their goal. How can I use your child to put bad money in, to steal money from that child, and then that child and their parents are responsible for the negative balance?
Yep. Right. And I think that teenagers are especially vulnerable to the romance scams because, as a teenager, like the emotions are running strong and, everything is kind of going on, and a lot of that is short-circuiting your executive functions.
Mhm.
You're not thinking too clearly. You get
Yes.
speeding tickets. You're doing things to impress people that you want to impress. It's really a sticky situation for them. It's a trap.
And they likely will not want to tell mom and dad
No.
about it, or they may not mention anything as how their feelings are blossoming in the
Yep.
beginning. And so, quite honestly, having this conversation about how this activity happens, we see it every day.
Absolutely.
Romance scams happen every day. And so, one of the best things that you can do with your children is just making sure that they understand, they have the knowledge of how that scam works.
Excellent points.
Thank
So when we look at the next section for video games,
you.
it takes on a little bit of a different stripe here. So a lot of video games will allow you to chat with somebody else while you're playing the game together. Could be complete strangers, and they have the ability to just keep talking to you, as quietly, subtly talk about this and that, pretend to be somebody else, and kind of groom the kids to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. And as Tiffany was saying earlier, deposit this check for me. It's a $500 check. You can keep $100. Just send me 400 because I have whatever excuse I made up this week. We also sometimes see fraudulent in-game sales. They say, "Oh, hey, we're playing this shooty game, and if you send me $100, I'll give you my Combat Wombat 5000." And the $500 goes out, and no Combat Wombat shows up for shooting bad guys. And then we just have good old-fashioned social engineering, where they're trying to gather information from our kids. Information. Hey, what's your name? What's your last name? What's your address? Do you have a social security card? I don't have a social security card. What's the number on yours? What's your credit card number? What's your debit card number? I don't have a debit card. My parents won't let me have a debit card, all while using a fake kid voice so that they seem like a fellow 14-year-old.
And that's an easy way for fraudsters to gather personal identifiable information in order to commit identity theft. And so, because children do not have established credit profiles, that's where they are the most vulnerable for that type of activity. And so what the fraudsters will take over your child's identity, not necessarily being your child, not necessarily putting your child's date of birth, but they will take your child's information, social security number, and change the date of the date of birth. They will change the year, so then that individual is an adult and that they can obtain credit, right?
Yep.
And so that's why it's a good thing to make sure that your child is aware not to share that information.
Absolutely.
If you don't need to share your date of birth, don't do that.
Yeah, and honestly, if you do, try not to anyways.
Yes.
I gave my dad's date of birth one day in Safeway when they asked me because I was purchasing something that required an age verification, just because I don't feel like giving it. I'm a little bit oppositional that way when it comes to gathering my information. Let's go ahead and take a look at our next section here. So we've discussed some of the ways that kids can help defend themselves from these scams, from these identity thefts. Some of these things are items that you can do right now to really inform them. And one of the first one is really talking about banking. If you are opening an account for them, that's a great time to have a talk about how a checking account works, how a savings account works.
Yes, Sean. The moment that when you are working to decide whether you are doing that is when you have that conversation, not after you've done it. Make sure your child is well aware of how a bank account works.
And honestly, some of us might not be that familiar with how a bank account works.
Mhm.
If you happen to come to a Patelco branch and open an account for your child, our team members will take the time to
Mhm.
help you have that conversation and really enforce that this is a big responsibility, and
Mhm.
you can burn yourself doing this. The next thing that we look to educate our kids about is, and we started this young with them, is keeping private things private. I remember chasing my kids around and having to tell them to put their pants back on because they just wanted to run around out in the sunshine in their birthday suits. And we have to keep private things private. So keeping our pants on, keeping our private information to ourselves too. We don't share our social security numbers with anybody. We
Mhm.
don't share our personal identification numbers, our PINs that we use with our
Mhm.
debit cards with anybody, nobody.
Mhm.
When you receive MFA codes to authenticate via your phone, don't share those with anybody, for crying out loud.
Mhm.
Don't do it. So we have to keep hammering on keeping private things private.
And
Again, go ahead, please.
yeah, thank you. And that's a great point, Sean, about keeping things private. And so, a very common scam that happens today, and this happens to both young people and adults, right? This can happen to anybody. Fraudsters will impersonate Patelco Credit Union employees. They
Yes.
will contact banking customers, banking members, and try to convince them that they are with Patelco and they are trying to socially engineer information from the member, these children. What
Mhm.
is your card number? I have to verify you. It looks like there's fraudulent activity that's happening on your accounts. Can you tell me what is your account number? What is your username for online banking? What is your password? I'm going to send you a code. And that is the fraudster logging into online banking and having the MFA code sent to the victim. And
Yep.
so making sure that these children understand, because you're getting that phone call does not necessarily mean that it is Patelco. It does not mean that it is the entity who claims to be calling you. If
Yep.
you receive a call in, always make sure you disconnect the phone and you contact the number on the back of your Patelco debit or credit card.
That is such a great point. I reinforce this with
Yes.
every fraud seminar that I do.
Yes.
And I go out into the public and do it with the community. I present here
Mhm.
online. Some of you may have seen me before, and you'll remember that I just keep banging on that particular drum. Do not trust that the person calling you is who they say they are.
I know. I even have to check your image when you call me, Sean. Okay. Sorry.
So, and I added one here because we're talking about kids, we're talking about security, and I advise every parent to set a secret word or a code word with their kids.
Mhm.
And this is like a verification.
Yeah.
It's like the password to get into the club. It is the password that tells me that it is indeed my child calling me, because they're doing some really, really crazy stuff with computers these days where they can sample somebody's voice for 10 seconds and
Mm.
use that to generate dialogue live on the phone that sounds exactly like that person. So somebody could sample my voice from this webinar, call Tiffany, and imitate my voice to make her think that I'm calling her and that I have special information, or that I need her to do something that she
Mhm.
would never do, like buy me, $1,500 worth of
Gift
gift
cards,
cards.
right? We're gonna set up a secret password after this call. Okay, what do we have next?
Now, when we're looking at online, we have some really good tools that are available to us. First of all, the parental controls available to us on all of the gaming systems, social media, and even for online banking at certain institutions, are really, really strong. You can do a lot to help prevent these scammers from accessing your kids. You can actually block strangers.
Mhm.
You have to, you can only talk to people that you already know. And you can enforce that as a parent so that when Johnny Stranger shows up and tries to have a conversation with your child, they're not able to. You can also limit the time that they're able to get into these gaming systems, or even on social media, and prevent them from being on there all night and chatting with strangers. And then finally, you can limit their capacity to make a mistake. So you can reduce the amount of things that they can do with their checking account, or reduce the amount of money that's in there that they can do, and really take control. Because as parents, a friend of mine once said to me that it's our job to teach them that the stove is hot without burning their fingers. We don't want them to experience large amounts of harm, just enough to learn, I should never do that again. So when we keep the risk small for them, they're allowed to be brave safely.
Mhm. Mhm.
The next part is to engage. I'm going to restrict myself to the bank accounts right now. Keep an eye on what's going on with a custodial account, or a student account that you get with your child. Just take a look. You're not too worried about whether they're spending money at Safeway, Sephora, or the burger place. But if you see a check deposited in there, that's when you have the conversation. Hey,
Mhm.
there's a deposit here for $500. That's crazy. What's going on?
Okay,
And
and I
then,
actually have stories about those types of incidents.
yeah,
And so, yes, yes. And so sometimes children, teenagers will say, I don't know what that is. Maybe because they're embarrassed that they deposited the funds, maybe because they think they're going to get into trouble. And
yep,
so I've seen incidents like that, but yet we would see images of the child walking into the branch and depositing the check, right?
yeah,
And so really making sure that you do engage with your kids when you open up the account with them, what the activity is happening, because sometimes those kids, they don't understand that we can look at online banking logs. We can verify it was their phone that made the deposit. We
yep,
can look at cameras and see that they went to the ATM or they walked into the branch. And so if they give their card to somebody who convinces them that it's a good idea and they're going to give them $200, just say it was fraud.
hmm,
Making sure that these children understand that they can get into, or they could be held liable for
yes,
that type of activity. And when they are held liable, whoever else is on the account may be held liable for that activity. So they are responsible for any deposits that they make into their account.
yep,
If they give access to a third party to make a deposit into the account, does not mean that those funds are good. Oftentimes, okay, majority of the time, 99.9% of the time, those funds are bad, right? And so really engaging with your children and making sure that they understand these are risks, right? And
absolutely.
yeah,
And we have a strong
yeah.
philosophy of avoiding shame or embarrassment when we're
Mhm.
discussing these situations with our members. And I think that may be something that can help parents
Yes.
when talking to their kids about what's going on with their account. We're at the point where we know something has
Mhm.
happened. We need to have the truth so that we can fix it properly
Yes.
before things get worse.
Absolutely, Sean. You are spot on. And so we're not looking to embarrass the children, right? We're not looking to be accusatory towards them. And if anything, oftentimes the children are a scam victim
Yeah,
and they need education, right? And we want to help them understand what happened and to make sure that they know how to avoid it going forward. And again, that's why we want to have this presentation today. We want to head off these scams before they ever happen.
absolutely. Absolutely. And then the last point that I have on here is to get alerts.
Mhm.
get alerted about what's going on with your bank accounts, get alerted about logins to your children's bank accounts, get alerts for deposits to your children's bank accounts, because that's how you get ahead of these things. You can take a look by logging in to online banking or something of that nature, or checking statements, but getting the alert means you know right away, hey, my son just deposited $500 to his account, and I don't know of any reason why he would have received $500. This is something to talk about. So getting it early is absolutely important. Tiffany, is there anything else that someone could do with online banking or alerts to really help head these things off?
And so for parents to receive alerts in order to monitor their children's accounts, there were also controls for cards, right? And so if a child's card's lost or missing, and so making sure that we cut that off before somebody finds the card, right? And so making sure that your child is aware of what they can do to protect themselves, right? Rather than, oh, I can't find it, I'll deal with that later, which I just heard from my teenage son not too long ago. And we had a conversation about.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I've heard that many times with my kids, and they lose things. That's what teenagers do. I'm pretty sure that they're designed to do it. And we just need to be able to deal with it when they lose things. And those card controls are a great way to handle that.
Yeah. Great.
So another thing that we can do for our kids to help prevent identity theft is to get a credit freeze for them. It's free for kids under 16. And it basically makes it so that it's very, very difficult for fraudsters to steal your children's identity and credit. There's a lot of information available about the process from our government. They've actually set up identitytheft.gov to help people not only deal with the outcomes and cleaning up after an identity theft, but it also has a lot of information on how to prevent identity theft.
Yes, that is absolutely one of the top resources on how to prevent identity theft from occurring. And as I was saying earlier, with the stealing of personal identifiable information, where the fraudsters are trying to socially engineer your children's social security number and name, setting up a credit freeze can most definitely help stop that process.
Yep. And then as parents, you do have access to check your children's credit reports. And that is another way that you can get ahead of any type of identity theft or credit damage that is happening. It's not quite as easy as checking our own, and they will require some identifying information from you to ensure that you are actually their parent and not a scammer. But it is worth the time to go in and check to make sure that nobody has opened up any lines of credit under your children's social security numbers. So what do we do if it happens? My kid has been scammed. My kid's identity has been stolen. Excuse me, I'm trying to read words on the screen too. You want to start calling the right people. First, file a police report and contact your financial institutions. Let them know what has happened, because my good friend Tiffany here is going to receive those calls, and she's going to have a lot more of them if we can't stop it early.
Yes, absolutely. And so our member contact center has a very skilled fraud experience team. They are trained to assist members who are victims of identity theft and scams, as well as helping you when you have issues with your children experiencing identity theft, as well as if you go into our branch or contact our virtual branch. Our team is very ready and able to assist members when that occurs.
And then again, I'm going to keep referring people to the identity theft website. It's just so full of great information to help you after you've already contacted your financial
Mhm.
institutions and the police.
I have bookmarked that website. I check it regularly. They update the information with relevant scams that are occurring, current fraud trends, as well as statistics of what is happening. Yeah, so it's a great tool, great resource.
Absolutely. So we'll go back to the parental controls. Put appropriate protections in for your kids. It's more than just keeping them away from video games that are too adult for them, or trying to keep them restricted to the very lowest access. We all know that as our children grow older, they need to have a little bit more freedom with what they're doing, but it's difficult to find where that line is. When it comes to social media, video game systems, and other online access things, keep those controls a little tighter. It's really important because the scammers are so active out there, that these controls, like I said before, are on just about everything that you can possibly connect to. And if you don't know how to make changes to the parental controls or enact them on your child's account, ask. Customer service organizations at almost all of these sites and systems are eager to help prevent any kind of abuse of kids, defrauding of kids, scamming of kids, everywhere. They've always been supportive and eager when I've had to call them. And then get alerts. You can be alerted to what your kids are doing online. And I think it's important for parents to keep track of that.
Absolutely.
So at Patelco, we have a great deal of resources available to not just our members, but the community in general. We will help anybody that we can. First off, we have our website, which is simply patelco.org/fraud. And I know that many teams at Patelco have created a huge amount of documents, resources, web pages, links for anybody who's experiencing fraud. And as Tiffany was mentioning earlier, our member contact center has a team dedicated to fraud experiences. If you have been scammed, if you have experienced fraud, if you are just concerned that somebody might have done something untoward with your information or your account, you can call in and ask them to check on it, or to let them know that somebody might try something, and they can make adjustments to your accounts to better protect you. It really is a remarkable, educated team that's available to help everybody. And finally, if you are considering getting bank accounts for your kids, please do consider Patelco. We will do everything we can to help you, to educate your kid, to help you have that conversation with your child about proper use of banking products. What does it mean to balance your checkbook? What does it mean to have interest? We can even talk about credit cards. What does it mean when somebody has a credit card? What does it do? What happens when you make a payment? What do you mean I'm paying interest? How do I not pay interest? All of these questions can be answered. And finally, we would like to thank you so much for spending this time with us today. We know that these evenings are quality time. It is not something that you're going to spend lightly on a presentation. And we really do appreciate you coming, listening to what we have to say, and sharing what you have to share. And if there are any questions, we will be here to answer them. Veronica, will you take
I
it
do
away?
have a question. If I am the victim of fraud, should I report that to Patelco?
Yes.
Yes.
That was a question.
Yes, absolutely. So depending upon the type of fraud that has actually occurred, this individual could be an identity theft victim and no transactions have occurred with Patelco. It is still very important for us to be aware of that. So that these fraudsters, they may realize you have a Patelco account, they could try to impersonate you and take over your account with us. And so we would want to know that information, want to make sure we have a security word set up on your account to protect you going forward. Now, if it's a transaction that occurs here at Patelco, and unfortunately that does happen, we would want to make sure that we perform an appropriate fraud investigation as well as reviewing the dispute process.
Okay.
And we do have a remarkable and amazing fraud department to investigate these things.
We do. Thank you, Sean.
So the next question is, can you explain what a phishing or a smishing or a vishing scam is?
Ooh, this is a good one, Sean.
Yep.
Phishing, vishing, and phishing, my favorite.
These
So,
are,
Sean, what is the difference between these? What is phishing?
so phishing is the classic sending an email to somebody purporting to be somebody else. So I could pretend to be Patelco and send an email to Veronica saying, your account's about to be locked out. Please send us the code so that we can verify you are who you are.
Yeah.
And, try to get something that's going to go against Veronica's best interests.
Now, I've heard, this is interesting because I've heard phishing is very general scam emails, right? Have you heard of the term spear phishing?
Yes. So spear phishing is a very directed version of phishing. So phishing is usually a broad net that's sent to thousands and thousands of people.
You purchased this on Amazon. Contact us if you didn't.
Right. Now, if I have information about Veronica, I know that she has a Patelco account, or I know she's got a sweet little green car. Like, maybe I know all these things about her, and then I can craft that email so that it lands a little bit better, has a little bit more information, and then Veronica would be more likely to believe that it's real.
Okay, now what's smishing?
Smishing just means that it's coming over messaging on your phone, which, it used to be called SMS. So then it became smishing.
Okay.
Because security folks like to play on words as much as we can.
Okay. And what's vishing?
Vishing is a voice call doing that same thing where I try to pretend.
That Patelco impersonator, right?
Right.
Got you. Okay.
So the next question is, how do you show your child how to protect their devices? Like their phones? Is there, do we have any recommendations for that?
I think it's a conversation, and I think it is. It depends on your own familiarity with protecting your phone. Now, I've been using cell phones for a very long time, but maybe I haven't, or maybe I just haven't really cared about securing my cell phone. But I really want to make sure that my child is going to secure their cell phone. I would actually talk to the folks at one of my provider's retail establishments. So if I were a customer of ABC Wireless, I would I would talk to ABC Wireless and say, hey, is there a way that we can have a conversation with my son about how to protect his phone in general? Or do you have other resources that are available? Because they will be the subject matter experts, and they will be able to help coach you to have a productive conversation, or even engage in that productive conversation about how to properly secure that phone.
Okay. Now, let's also dive a little bit into, how do fraudsters take over a child's cell phone, right? And so the fraudster can either socially engineer your child and convince them to download TeamViewer and to view your child's cell phone and control that cell phone. That's where the child is the unwitting victim who's allowing them to do that. But how does a fraudster gain access to a cell phone without the child knowing, Sean?
So sometimes that can happen through vulnerabilities in the phones.
Okay.
And there are occasionally very, very special types of messages that can be sent to a phone that will actually compromise that phone without any interaction from the user. We call them no-click compromises, where if you receive a message that has, something on it, a very, very particularly crafted thing on it, it can actually compromise your phone and make it available to the fraudsters, the scammers, and other terrible people.
Okay, that makes me want to go Google that right after this meeting. Now, I I know we should also be telling our children not to click on links from unknown individuals, right?
Absolutely. We should be telling all of the adults we know that too, because
Mhm.
it happens. It happens often, and they'll do a lot. That these guys are really skilled. This is their full-time job. This is how they
Mhm.
actually earn money, and it's not earning it. It's stealing it. It's stealing it from
Mhm.
everybody. So we want to not click on links from people that we don't know. And some of these look really good. I've come close to clicking them because it looked that real. I deal with this all the time, and all they need to do is catch you at a moment of maybe you're tired or you're in a hurry,
Mhm.
and you click.
And not only that, I know that there are times when fraudsters will take over somebody's social media account or their cell phone, and they will send messages to the contacts
Yes.
of that takeover victim, right? And so
Yes.
that's where your child may receive a request in from their friend saying, I'm stranded, I need help, please send me money.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a fraudster who's trying to convince them to send the funds out,
Yes, it
right?
is.
So if it's an out of pattern message, even from someone your child should really look into that, or at least speak with you, their parent, before doing anything.
Yes, absolutely.
I have a question. How about, is it good or bad to use public Wi-Fi? Is that a problem?
So there are a lot of technical details that go into that, and deciding whether or not particular public Wi-Fi is safe. So in general, I advise people to avoid using public Wi-Fi.
And don't check your online banking on public Wi-Fi.
Oh, for Pete's sake,
Do not.
don't do that.
Why, Tiffany? I do it all the time.
Veronica, we're going to have a conversation after.
Unfortunately,
I know. It makes it easy and you're not thinking about it, right?
Yep.
And you're out, you're on the hotel Wi-Fi or what have you, and you want to check your online banking just to see where things are, right? It does not necessarily mean that every single time somebody's going to try to steal your information. However, that's where fraudsters know you are.
Yep.
They know you're going to be checking your online banking. I remember reading an article about one of the most recent Olympics where somebody got onto public Wi-Fi, or it was a news organization getting on the public Wi-Fi, and within 1 minute, a fraudster was in on their computer. And so where fraudsters know that you're congregating, they know you're on public Wi-Fi, they may take advantage of that.
Well, that's some really good information. So one more. What is a money mule? Can you
Tiffany, I think this one is yours.
Yes, this is a great question. And so if you search the word money mule, oftentimes you will find that this is an individual, a victim, who may not realize they are the victim of a scam. What fraudsters do, they understand that if they just have funds stolen from victim A and sent to themselves, they are very traceable by law enforcement. So what they want to do is have many layers set up between the victim they're stealing from and themselves. So they will send it from victim A to victim B to victim C to victim D, and then to themselves or through Bitcoin. right? Or a cryptocurrency, not even necessarily Bitcoin. It could be any other form of money. They could convince somebody to go into the bank and pull out cash and mail it to a drop address. And so these fraudsters are trying to make themselves anonymous. They don't want to get caught. That's where the money mule comes into play. They may give that money mule some funds, thinking that it's part of a job. They may do it as part of a romance scam, where I'm going to have my attorney send you money, and then I need you to forward it to this person. And so the person in the middle, who still may be held liable if the account goes negative, is the money mule.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's just so many ways that our children
Yes.
can get scammed. And I think it's the two of you seem to say that we have to be aware. And even those of us who are highly intelligent and even in the business, sometimes we slip.
Yeah.
I got a
Yes.
text message the other day and it said, call your Chase account because, and it wasn't Chase. And it looked like Chase. So, I
And
think
that's what those fraudsters do, Veronica.
yeah.
They will take messaging specifically set up by Patelco, specifically set up by other financial institutions. They will replicate that.
So
because
if
that's how
it's
they're
too
gonna
good
trick
to
us.
be true,
Yes, it is too good to be
What-
true.
if we tell our children, if it looks like it's too good to be true, it is not true. We
Mhm.
want to make sure that our children are not trusting, that they don't give out their personal information, that they don't talk to strangers. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about not talking to strangers as we wrap up today's webinar.
Well, it's always it's the strangers who are typically going to get you when we're talking about online and social media and gaming platforms. You're not typically going to be approached by a friend via one of these to try to engage you in some type of a bad situation. So we call them strangers because they're strange to us. They're not our friends. They're not people who have our best interests at heart. We haven't gained any familiarity or friendship with them. And we need to be especially cautious about these people.
Mhm.
We need to have boundaries. There are appropriate boundaries for
Absolutely.
dealing with our family. There are appropriate boundaries for our friends. And then there are appropriate boundaries for people we just don't know.
Mhm. And I know that the pandemic was hard because kids were at home.
Mhm.
Kids were at home for a period of time. They were very much online. They were very much on social media. And so that was their interaction with other individuals. And so you become complacent,
Yes.
become comfortable in that environment because this is what my friends are doing. This is what I'm doing. We all hop onto this social media platform and we communicate with everyone. And oh, look, this person's going to give me money. And so just making sure that these children still understand how they can be taken advantage of, and not everybody is out there to give you money or to do good things.
Yeah.
Protect yourself. And so it's being scrutinizing, it's being conscientious of the actions that you're taking.
Yep. It's easy to grow comfortable, especially when we have we generalize the online experience. So maybe we're comfortable using the classroom software from our school, which is fairly locked down. But that doesn't mean that you're ready to jump onto Facebook and start chatting with everybody that makes a funny post. Growing up, my friend lived on a cul-de-sac, and when we were little, he was allowed to ride his bicycle in the cul-de-sac. I grew up on a busy feeder street. Yeah, if I rode my bike in the street, I was going to get run over. They're
I was
both
in a cul-de-sac. So I understand.
Yeah, they're both streets, but one is way safer than the other.
So thank you. I think this was a phenomenal presentation. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for coming in with your cape on at the last minute. You were engaging, you were fun. We so appreciate you. And Sean, you're just a polished professional.
Oh,
and
thank you so
the
much.
information was relevant and fun and easy to listen to. So you guys remember, Talk to your children about online scams. Give them an overview of what an online scam is. Show examples of what targets kids. Protect your devices. Put family guidelines in place for device use, like avoiding public Wi-Fi, don't provide personal information online, strong passwords and multi-identification, and don't talk to strangers. We are honored that you spent your time with us today. We have it's a part of our mission to grow your financial health and the financial health of your kids, so you can increase your financial capacity and have a good, happy, long life. We here at Patelco are dedicated to your financial health. So thank you so much for attending this webinar. If you have any other questions, you can go to patelco.org/fraud. And if you ever have a fraud, call us. Don't be afraid. Step up and call us before you put your financial lives at risk.